Hi everyone. You might recall that my most recent video was asking you a question, and in short, I was basically asking all my readers and viewers why they felt that they could never achieve the kind of recovery that I had achieved. And I got a lot of really interesting answers. People really did answer me, and that's exactly what I wanted. So, thanks to everyone who actually responded to that question, gave me their thoughts, gave me their ideas, gave me their feelings on the matter. And what I wanted to do was sort of go through all the responses I received and basically just respond to the answers that you've given me. And if you haven't yet seen that video, you can catch it here. I'll post you the link. I asked the question that I just stated, but I also went more in depth about what I was really trying to get at. I got a lot of responses, and I'm going to try to respond to the majority of them, or ones that a lot of people answered the same way. So this is actually going to be a two-part video because I can't fit everything I want to say and respond to everything that everyone was kind enough to write to me all in one 10-minute YouTube video. So you'll have to watch part one and stay tuned for the second part. Someone wrote that they might be afraid to succeed, and that's something that's holding them back from achieving the kind of recovery that I have. And, she asked the question, why are we afraid of success? And it's a really good question because people without eating disorders are terribly afraid of success. And so many people are afraid of failure, but when you really stop to examine yourself and your situation, I think that you'll find sometimes you're not necessarily afraid of failure, you're actually more afraid of success. And she makes the comment, but I already am failing in life because of my eating disorder. You're not failing in life simply because you have an eating disorder. You're not even failing because you are not succeeding at recovering from it. It doesn't constitute a failure, at least not in my mind. It just means that you have an issue, you have a problem, and you're struggling with it, and it doesn't make you any different than most of the people in this world. I think sometimes that the fear of success with people who have eating disorders stems from the fact that they know if they succeed in recovery that they're going to be setting themselves apart from their eating disorder. And that can be really scary because if you are only identifying yourself with your eating disorder and you're not identifying yourself with anything else, it can be really, really frightening to break away from that. Someone else said, I feel like there are so many things besides recovery which I need to do. Recovery is a priority and I can sustain a partial recovery mostly, but I often can't put in all the energy needed to be fully recovered because I'm struggling to do all the other things I need and want to do. And it makes perfect sense because that used to be me exactly several years ago. I definitely felt that way for sure. This person also goes on to say, I feel like I entertain a series of mini relapses on a weekly or monthly basis, but because it's not fully an eating disorder anymore, I don't focus on getting things completely right. And it's really interesting because I would say the majority of people out there that have not achieved full recovery are people like this commenter who is saying, they've achieved it partially. They're not in dire straits. They're not, they don't feel like they're in danger of dying, for example, maybe, but they are not achieving the perfect quality of life that they would like to achieve. And I validate this person's response and I really understand it. I do. But at the same time, that reason as being why that person thinks that she can't achieve the kind of recovery I have, it's false because I have achieved recovery and I used to feel exactly the same way. So to that, I just want to say you can do it and you can achieve it. And it might not feel like it right now, which is often the case. I mean, sometimes we just feel like, we're going through the motions and we're not as bad as we used to be. So at least that's something. And it is something. It is. It doesn't mean that you haven't achieved anything. But, you can keep going one day at a time, and eventually all the things that you need and want to do will either be less or they won't seem as important as achieving full recovery because you're gonna you're going to lose that luster of life if you don't start putting a little bit more emphasis on recovery as a priority. This commenter also says, I'm pretty scared to let go of this huge part of myself. I'm so used to having this second voice in my head, scared to lose it because then I'd be alone with absolutely no way to cope with things when they go wrong. Even with the eating disorder mostly gone, I keep little bits alive. It gives me an identity. She has a question mark. I don't think that's the best way of putting it, but through finding other people with eating disorders, I finally feel understood and accepted. I guess I worry about disconnecting from that too. And that is a really good one. I hadn't thought about that when I posted this question. I hadn't thought about all of those people out there who have this network, have this friendship base, this support base on the internet and otherwise where their eating disorders are concerned. And it's a very big thing. And I can fully understand that it would be very hard to sort of feel that you were breaking away from that if you wanted to achieve full recovery. But something that you might not be thinking of in that regard is that, you know that I consider myself fully recovered, but I am completely in the mainstream of all of these networks, whether they're social networks, whether they're forums, whether they're, YouTube channels, websites, things like that. I'm still there. I am there as much as people that are struggling every single day that they live. And I might be there for a different reason, to offer help or advice, or to show people, hey, recovery is possible. But I'm there, and I still keep in touch with plenty of people who either still have an eating disorder or who used to have an eating disorder like me. And I've made some really great friendships through eating disorder support networks, and I haven't lost them because I consider myself recovered. I haven't. So I hope that that makes you feel a little bit better as far as that. And I also wanted to say that if you don't feel like you want to be part of those networks to give people advice and, have a blog or a YouTube channel in the way that I do, that's fine. Just being there and saying, I understand where you're coming from because that used to be me, that's support. You're still supporting someone. You don't have to be struggling 100% of the time to give someone else support. So, just take that to heart. Someone says, I'm scared of going out into the world unprotected, of who I am without this, scared of my potential, but more than that, of not reaching that potential. And that goes along with the first commenter that I quoted, being scared of success instead of being scared of failure, and sort of thinking to yourself, I'm so scared of my potential, but what it really is you're afraid of not reaching that potential, maybe afraid of disappointing yourself, disappointing others in your life, because disappointing people in your life is the worst feeling, and I completely understand that. But you don't want to give power to that kind of emotional response, because all it's really doing is holding you back. And I used to be the biggest people pleaser there was, and I still have a little bit of that in me. Still, I have to remind myself sometimes, or my husband has to tell me, it doesn't matter what other people think. And I stop for a second and I remember that that's the case. But you aren't doing this for other people, you're doing this for yourself. And you don't have to have some crazy perception of what equals real recovery or what equals real success. You just want to keep trying to move forward and make yourself better every single day that happens. I mean, I don't think that I've reached my full potential. I'm 26 years old. I have a lot of life to live. So don't sell yourself short. Just sort of take one step at a time, one day at a time. Don't make the bigger picture too big. And then this same person also says, I tell myself that the system is the reason why, but really the internal barriers to recovery are much harder to overcome. And I agree with that. I know that there are a lot of systems out there, especially health systems that are not United States based, which is the one that I'm primarily familiar with. And, they're lacking in a lot of things, but really the internal struggle is the harder one. That's really what it comes down to. But don't give up on yourself. Don't say, it's really me and I'm keeping me from achieving full recovery. Don't do that. Don't go that route. Just tell yourself you can do it. And maybe today you can't do it, but hopefully eventually you will be able to.